Welcome back to Kubernetes Crashcasts. I'm Shayla, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Victor. Before we dive in, we'd love to hear from you. If you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to rate us on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more listeners who are as excited about Kubernetes as we are.
Absolutely, Sheila. Your support means the world to us. Now let's get into today's episode. We're wrapping up our chapter on understanding Kubernetes architecture, which is part of our introduction to Kubernetes season.
That's right, Victor. And to kick things off, I've got a quiz question for our listeners. Here it is. In Kubernetes architecture, what component is responsible for maintaining the desired state of the cluster and making global decisions?
Ooh, that's a great question, Sheila. It really gets to the heart of how Kubernetes operates. Listeners, take a moment to think about it. We've covered a lot of components in this chapter, and each plays a crucial role. This particular component is like the brain of the entire operation. I'm excited to hear what our listeners come up with.
Absolutely. Now, before we dive into our summary, let's quickly recap some key terms we've covered in this chapter. Victor, could you give us a quick refresher on what we mean by nodes in Kubernetes?
Certainly. In Kubernetes, nodes are the machines, either physical or virtual, that make up the cluster. They're where our applications actually run. There are two types: master nodes, which control the cluster, and worker nodes, which run the applications.
Thanks, Victor. That's a great foundation for our discussion. Now, let's start our summary of the Kubernetes architecture. We've covered a lot in this chapter, from the overall structure to the individual components. What would you say is the most fundamental aspect of Kubernetes architecture?
Great question, Sheila. I'd say the most fundamental aspect is the division between the control plane and the data plane. The control plane, which runs on the master nodes, manages the overall state of the cluster. It's like the brain of the system. The data plane, consisting of the worker nodes, is where the actual application workloads run.
That makes sense. It's almost like the brain and the body of the system, right? The control plane makes the decisions, and the data plane carries them out. Could you elaborate on some of the key components of the control plane?
Absolutely. The main components of the control plane are the API server, etcd, the scheduler, and the controller manager. The API server is like the front door of Kubernetes. All communication goes through it. etcd is the cluster's database, storing all the configuration data. The scheduler decides where to place new workloads, and the controller manager ensures that the current state of the cluster matches the desired state.
That's a great overview, Victor. I'm curious, how does this architecture enable Kubernetes to be so flexible and scalable?
That's where the declarative model comes in, Sheila. Instead of telling Kubernetes exactly what to do step by step, we declare what we want the end state to look like. Kubernetes then works to make that happen. It's like telling a GPS your destination instead of giving turn-by-turn directions.
I love that analogy. It really helps to visualize how Kubernetes operates. Now, speaking of challenges, are there any potential pitfalls that users should be aware of when working with this architecture?
Absolutely, Sheila. One common misunderstanding is thinking that Kubernetes will automatically solve all your scaling and deployment problems. While it provides powerful tools, it still requires careful planning and management. Another challenge is the learning curve. There are many components and concepts to understand.
Those are great points, Victor. Speaking of learning, do you have any tips or tricks for our listeners who are trying to wrap their heads around Kubernetes architecture?
One technique I find helpful is to think of Kubernetes as a big, automated data center. The master nodes are like the operations team, making decisions and keeping everything running smoothly. The worker nodes are like the racks of servers where applications run. This mental model can help in understanding how different components interact.
That's a fantastic way to think about it. Now, before we wrap up, let's reveal the answer to our quiz question. Victor, would you like to do the honors?
Of course, the component responsible for maintaining the desired state of the cluster and making global decisions is the control plane, specifically the controller manager within the control plane. It's constantly working to ensure that the current state of the cluster matches what we've declared we want.
Excellent. To summarize our chapter on Kubernetes architecture, we've learned about the division between control plane and data plane, the key components like the API server, etcd, scheduler, and controller manager, and how the declarative model allows for flexible and scalable deployments. Remember, understanding this architecture is crucial for effectively working with Kubernetes.
Absolutely, Sheila. And as we close this chapter, I want to remind our listeners that Kubernetes is a powerful tool, but it's also complex. Don't be discouraged if it takes time to fully grasp. That's completely normal.
Great point, Victor. And to our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into Kubernetes architecture. If you found this helpful, please visit crashcasts.com and consider joining our Discord community. Your support on Patreon also goes a long way in helping us create more content like this. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast. It really does make a difference.
Thanks for listening, everyone. In our next episode, we'll be starting a new chapter on Kubernetes core concepts. Stay tuned.